a young hiker steps into the wild heart of the Grand Tetons, chasing a perfect sunrise. But she never comes back. 11 months later, a ranger spots something chilling in an eagle's nest. What could it mean? Hey, don't forget to like, please. Subscribe for more shocking crime stories and hit the bell icon. The darkest truth are yet to come. The Grand Tetons don't whisper their dangers, they roar them. Jagged peaks claw at the Wyoming sky, their granite faces unyielding, carved by eons of wind and ice. No gentle slopes ease you into their presence. They rise abrupt and brutal from the valley floor, daring anyone to test their indifference. In the summer of 2023, 26-year-old Claire Hensley walked into this untamed cathedral of stone, her heart set on capturing its raw beauty. She vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of questions and a family shattered by silence. Claire wasn't a stranger to the wilderness. Born in Boise, Idaho, she'd grown up with dirt under her nails and a love for the mountains that ran deeper than most. By her mid-20s, she'd traded a cubicle job in marketing for a life closer to the wild. Moving to Jackson Hole to work as a freelance nature photographer, her small studio apartment was a shrine to her passion, walls covered with her own prints, golden light spilling over Teton peaks. A lone elk grazing in a misty meadow, a cascade of stars above a silent ridge. Her camera, a Canon EOS R5, was her constant companion, a tool to translate the wilderness's fleeting moments into something eternal. Friends called her careful, almost obsessive. She wasn't the type to chase adrenaline or take reckless risks. She respected the mountains, studied their moods, and planned every hike with the precision of a cartographer. In late July 2023, Claire set her sights on the Teton Crest Trail, a 40-mile gauntlet of high-altitude passes and sweeping vistas. It was her most ambitious solo trek yet, a 5-day journey she'd been dreaming of since she first saw the Tetons as a teenager. She spent weeks preparing, poring over topographic maps, checking weather forecasts, and packing her gear with methodical care. Her backpack, a well-worn Gregory Paragon, held a lightweight tent, a sleeping bag rated 4 sub-zero nights, a Jetboil stove, and enough dehydrated meals to last the trip. She carried a Spot satellite messenger, promising her older sister, Emily, she'd check in daily. "I'm ready," she told Emily over a grainy video call, her voice bright with anticipation as she showed off her gear spread across her apartment floor. "This is my chance to shoot something unforgettable." Her sister's voice wavered with pride and worry. "Just be careful, okay? Those mountains don't mess around." Claire laughed, her hazel eyes sparkling. "I know them better than I know myself. I'll be fine." That was the last time Emily saw her sister's smile. On the morning of July 28, 2023, Claire parked her dusty Jeep at the Granite Canyon trailhead. The air was crisp, scented with pine and the promise of a warm day. She adjusted her pack, her dark braid swinging as she moved, and snapped a quick selfie against the backdrop of the Teton's sawtoothed skyline. She sent it to Emily with a text, "Here we go. Mountains are calling. Back Monday." Then she stepped onto the trail, her hiking boots crunching on gravel, her figure shrinking into the dense forest of lodgepole pines. The wilderness swallowed her whole. Monday came, and the sun dipped below the peaks, casting long shadows over Jackson Hole. Emily waited, her phone silent. No text, no satellite ping. By 10 p.m., unease coiled in her gut. Claire was diligent almost, annoyingly so. She'd never miss a check-in without a reason. Emily tried calling, but Claire's cheerful voicemail only deepened the dread. Maybe her battery died, Emily told herself, pacing her Boise apartment. Maybe she's just delayed. But by Tuesday morning, with no word, the excuses crumbled. Something was wrong. At 8:47 a.m., Emily called the Teton County Sheriff's Office, her voice trembling as she gave them Claire's name, her route, and the chilling fact that she hadn't been heard from in 4 days. The National Park Service snapped into action. By noon, rangers confirmed Claire's Jeep was still parked at the trailhead, its windshield dusted with pollen, untouched since Friday. A trail register entry confirmed her plan. Teton Crest Trail, 5 days, solo, no sign-out. Ranger Laura Mitchell, a veteran with a sharp eye for the backcountry, stood by the Jeep, her stomach tightening. "This isn't a late hiker," she muttered to her partner. "Something's off." By dusk, a full-scale search and rescue operation was underway, a well-oiled machine of urgency and precision. The Teton Crest Trail became a hive of activity. Helicopters thumped overhead, their blades slicing through the thin mountain air. Ground teams, equipped with climbing gear and topographic maps, fanned out across the trail's rugged 40 miles. Canine units, led by dogs trained to sniff out human scent, scoured the alpine meadows and rocky passes. At a command post near Lee Lake, Incident Commander Dan Rivera briefed his team. Claire Hensley, 26, experienced hiker, well prepared, he said, pointing to a map marked with her planned campsites. "She's out there somewhere. Let's bring her home." Imagine if you were there. You're hiking alone on a trail that feels like the edge of the world, the wind howling, the peaks towering above you. Suddenly, you realize you haven't seen another soul for hours. Would you feel free or exposed? That's what I think about when I picture Claire out there, her camera in hand, chasing that perfect shot, unaware of what was coming. The first real clue came on day 3 of the search, high up near Hurricane Pass, where Claire had planned to camp on her second night. A ground team found her tent, a green MSR Hubba Hubba, pitched perfectly in a sheltered grove of firs. It was a haunting scene, stakes driven deep, guy lines taut, everything in place as if she'd just stepped away. Inside, her sleeping pad was unrolled, a half-read paperback on wilderness photography tucked beside it, but her main backpack was gone. Her hiking boots were missing. A small day pack, containing only a water filter and a granola bar wrapper, sat abandoned in the tent's corner. It didn't add up. Why would she take her heavy pack and leave the lighter one behind? Hikers don't do that. They take the day pack for short trips and leave the heavy gear at camp. The team stood in silence, the wind whistling through the pass, as if the mountains themselves were mocking their confusion. The canine unit arrived, led by a Belgian Malinois named Juno. She sniffed the tent, her nose twitching, and bolted toward a faint trail leading not along the main path, but into a dense thicket of willows and jagged talus. The team followed, scrambling over loose rock, their breath visible in the chilly air. Juno's handler, Mike, struggled to keep up as the dog pushed deeper into the unforgiving terrain. After a quarter mile, the trail veered sharply upward, toward a sheer cliff face littered with boulders. Then Juno stopped. She circled, wind, and sat, her ears pinned back. The scent ended abruptly, impossibly, as if Claire had vanished into the air. Mike radioed back, his voice tight. "Scent trail's gone. It just stops. We're at a dead end." The discovery sent a chill through the search team. People don't just disappear like that, not without a trace. Theories swirled. A fall from a cliff, a bear attack, a sudden decision to veer off trail. But there was no blood, no torn gear, no signs of a struggle. The Tetons were vast, their crevices and dense forests, capable of hiding a body forever. But Claire's preparation and experience made a simple accident feel unlikely. The search pressed on, helicopters sweeping the high ridges, ground teams combing every drainage. Days turned to weeks. A storm rolled in, dumping rain and obliterating any faint tracks. By day 12, the operation scaled back. The official word was suspended, but to Claire's family, it felt like abandonment. Emily refused to accept it. She drove to Jackson, her eyes red from sleepless nights, and set up a makeshift vigil at the ranger station. She handed out flyers with Claire's photo, that radiant trailhead selfie, her smile bright against the Teton skyline. Claire's parents, Tom and Linda, joined her, their faces etched with quiet desperation. Tom, a retired high school teacher, spent hours staring at maps, tracing his daughter's route with a trembling finger. "She's out there," he'd say, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's waiting for us." The community rallied, volunteers joining weekend searches, but the Tetons held their secrets tight. Claire's case grew cold, her name fading into the grim roster of those lost to the wilderness. But one man wouldn't let it go. Tom Hensley became a ghost in the Tetons, a lone figure trekking the trails every weekend, his pickup truck a familiar sight at remote trailheads. He wasn't a surveyor like Mark Turner in the transcript you shared, but he'd taught geography for 30 years and knew how to read the land. He carried Claire's maps, marked with her neat handwriting, and searched with a dogged intensity that worried the rangers. They'd offer him water, urge him to rest, but Tom's eyes told them he couldn't stop. "I taught her to love these mountains," he'd say. "I have to bring her back." I stumbled across Claire's story in a local Jackson newspaper last year, tucked between ads for ski rentals and coffee shops. The headline, "Hiker Missing on Teton Crest Trail," caught my eye, but it was her photo that stayed with me. That smile, so full of life, and those mountains behind her, so unforgiving. I haven't stopped thinking about her since. Meanwhile, online forums buzzed with speculation. True crime enthusiasts on Reddit and hiking groups on X dissected every detail. Some argued Claire had slipped on loose scree, her body hidden in a crevice. Others pointed to her journal entries, shared by Emily in desperation, where Claire wrote about craving solitude. Maybe she wanted to disappear, one user posted, sparking heated debates. But the theory that gained traction was darker: foul play. A hiker at the trailhead had mentioned seeing a lone man, maybe in his 40s, with a weathered pack and a guarded demeanor, passing Claire that morning. He hadn't spoken, just kept his head down. The description was vague, but it fueled a chilling narrative. Was he a witness? Or something worse? Months passed. Autumn painted the Tetons in fiery hues, then winter buried them in snow. Claire's story became a cautionary tale, whispered to new hikers, the photographer who vanished chasing a sunrise. Her missing person posters faded in the visitor center, their edges curling under the relentless sun. But in July 2024, nearly a year later, a spark of hope or horror emerged from the most unlikely place. Ranger Ethan Caldwell, a biologist with a passion for raptors, was high in the Tetons, tracking golden eagle nests. His work took him to places few ever saw: remote basins, sheer cliffs, the raw heart of the range. On July 20th, 2024, he stood on a windswept ridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, scanning a known eagle's nest 200 feet up a granite face. The nest was a chaotic tangle of branches, a marvel of nature's engineering. But something caught his eye. Flash of unnatural color woven into the sticks, orange, sharp against the muted browns. Then another, a glint of silver, like metal. His pulse quickened. Trash in an eagle's nest wasn't uncommon, but this felt different. Ethan marked his coordinates and radioed his position. The climb was treacherous, a near vertical scramble over loose rock. He moved with care, his boots slipping on scree, his hands gripping cold granite. When he reached the ledge, his breath caught. The orange was a torn scrap of nylon, likely from a backpack. The silver was a carabiner, scratched but intact, the kind hikers clipped to their gear. His mind raced to Claire's case, to the flyers he'd seen, to the orange accents on her Gregory pack in that last photo. This wasn't random debris. This was a clue. He photographed everything, careful not to disturb the nest, and radioed his supervisor. "I think I found something," he said, his voice steady but urgent. It might be tied to Claire Hensley. The ranger station erupted. A cold case was suddenly burning hot. The items were bagged, airlifted to headquarters, and compared to Claire's gear, the orange nylon matched the fabric of her backpack. The carabiner was the same brand she used. A new theory took shape, one that turned stomachs. Golden eagles are scavengers, drawn to carrion. Had one carried these scraps from Claire's body or her killer's trail to this remote nest? The discovery narrowed the search to a single square mile, a rugged basin below the nest. A specialized team assembled. Forensic experts, cadaver dogs, high-angle rescue climbers. They weren't looking for a survivor anymore. They were looking for answers. As the helicopter lifted them into the basin, the Tetons loomed, silent and vast, holding their secrets just out of reach. What had the eagles seen, and what would the mountains finally reveal? The Teton Basin was a crucible of stone and silence, its jagged cliffs and tangled underbrush guarding their secrets with an ancient, unyielding resolve. Below the Golden Eagle's nest, where Ranger Ethan Caldwell had found scraps of orange nylon and a scratched carabiner, a specialized search team moved with grim precision. Forensic anthropologists, cadaver dogs, and high-angle rescue climbers combed a single square mile of brutal terrain, their boots crunching on loose scree, their breath visible in the thin July air of 2024. They weren't searching for Claire Hensley alive, not after 11 months. They were searching for a grave, a truth, a fragment of the vibrant 26-year-old photographer who'd vanished chasing a sunrise on the Teton Crest Trail. The eagle's nest had given them a clue, but the mountains weren't ready to surrender the rest. The team worked in a tight grid, their movements slow and deliberate. The dogs, noses low to the ground, zigzagged through thorny brush and stunted firs. The anthropologists scanned for unnatural disturbances of rock that didn't belong, soil too loose for the season's erosion. For 2 days, the mountains mocked them with silence, the only sounds the whistle of wind and the distant cry of a hawk. Claire's family waited in Jackson, their hope a fragile thread stretched thin by months of grief. Her father, Tom, stood at the ranger station, clutching a worn copy of Claire's trail map, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if he could will her back. Emily, her sister, paced, her phone gripped tight, checking for updates that never came. The weight of the unknown pressed on them all, a suffocating fog of what-ifs. On the third morning, a cadaver dog named Aspen, a lanky German shepherd with a nose sharper than any machine, froze near a cluster of boulders at the base of a steep slope. Her ears twitched, and she let out a low, insistent whine, pawing at the earth. Her handler, Sarah, knelt beside her, her heart pounding. "She's got something," Sarah called, her voice cutting through the morning chill. The team converged, their tools trowels, brushes, gloved hands moving with a reverence that felt almost sacred. The anthropologists, led by Dr. Michael Torres, examined the spot. To an untrained eye, it was just dirt and rock, but Torres saw the subtle signs, a depression too uniform, rocks stacked with purpose rather than nature's chaos. "Here," he said, pointing. "Dig carefully." They worked for hours, peeling back layers of soil with agonizing care. A searcher's brush caught on something, a scrap of faded orange fabric, the same shade as Claire's backpack. Then, a few inches deeper, a glint of metal, a zipper pull, mangled but unmistakable. The air grew heavy, the team's movements slower, as if they sensed the weight of what they were about to uncover. By noon, they'd exposed a shallow grave, no more than 18 inches deep. Inside lay skeletal remains, a human form preserved by the dry mountain air. A tattered hiking boot, still laced, clung to one foot. Nearby, a Canon EOS R5 camera, its lens cracked, lay half buried in the dirt. The team documented everything, their cameras clicking in the silence. The remains were airlifted to the Teton County Coroner's office, and within 48 hours, dental records confirmed the worst. It was Claire Hensley. The news hit her family like a slow-motion landslide. Emily collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing, while Tom stared blankly at the ranger, delivering the update, his hands trembling. Relief that Claire had been found mingled with the raw agony of knowing she was gone forever. But the autopsy would reveal a truth far darker than a hiking accident, one that would shatter every assumption and plunge the case into a nightmare. Dr. Torres's examination of Claire's remains uncovered a grim story written in bone. Her skull bore a deep fracture, the kind caused by a single, brutal blow with a heavy object, a rock, perhaps, or a blunt tool. Her arm showed a defensive wound, a broken ulna, suggesting she'd fought back. Trace evidence, meticulously collected, revealed something even more horrific: signs of sexual assault. Claire hadn't slipped on a trail or been mauled by a bear. She'd been murdered, her life stolen in a violent, deliberate act. The Teton County Sheriff's Office reclassified the case as a homicide, and the investigation, dormant for months, roared back to life. Imagine if you were there. Picture yourself alone in those mountains, the sun setting, the air growing cold. You hear a twig snap behind you, but when you turn, no one's there. Would you trust your instincts and run, or tell yourself it's just the wind? I think about Claire in that moment, her camera in hand, unaware of the shadow creeping closer, and it chills me to my core. Investigators revisited every scrap of evidence, their focus now on malice rather than misfortune. The vague description of the lone hiker seen near Clare at the trailhead, a man in his 40s. Weathered pack, eyes averted, became their only lead. The hiker had been a footnote in the initial search, a possible witness. Now, he was a suspect. A forensic sketch artist worked with the witness, a retiree from Colorado who'd been hiking that day, to create a composite: a lean man with hollow cheeks, a scruffy beard, and eyes that seemed to look through you. The sketch was released to the media, no longer as a person of interest, but as a potential killer. It spread like wildfire across news outlets and X, reigniting public interest. Online sleuths dubbed him the Crest Phantom, weaving theories about a predator stalking the trails. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In August 2024, a gas station clerk in Driggs, Idaho, 30 miles from Jackson, saw the sketch on a local news broadcast. Her name was Karen, a no-sense woman who'd worked the graveyard shift for years. She called the sheriff's tip line, her voice steady but urgent. "I know that face," she said. "He came in here last summer, bought coffee and jerky. Always paid cash. Said his name was John Kessler." She remembered him because he'd lingered, staring at a missing person flyer for Claire taped to the counter. He didn't say anything, just looked at it for a long time, then left. Karen's tip included one more detail. He'd mentioned working odd jobs at a nearby ranch. The Teton County Sheriff's Office, working with the FBI, dug into John Kessler's past. He was a 43-year-old drifter, a man who lived off the grid, moving between seasonal jobs in the Rockies. His record was sparse, but troubling: a dismissed assault charge from his 20s, a string of aliases, and no fixed address. By cross-referencing labor agencies, they traced him to a cattle ranch outside Pinedale, Wyoming. On August 15, 2024, a joint task force descended on the ranch at dawn. Kessler was found in a bunkhouse, his belongings packed as if he were ready to bolt. He didn't resist, his face blank as they cuffed him. In a locked duffel bag, investigators found a trove that turned their blood cold: a woman's silver bracelet, a pair of earrings, and a small notebook with dates and locations, including Teton Crest, July 23. Tucked inside was a memory card, its label scratched but legible: Canon EOS R5. At the FBI's forensics lab in Salt Lake City, technicians accessed the memory card. The first images were Claire's stunning shots of alpine meadows, a moose silhouetted against a dawn sky, the Tetons glowing under alpenglow. Then the photos changed. The final dozen were taken by someone else: Claire, unaware, setting up her tent; Claire hiking, her braid swinging. Then, Horrific images, her face frozen in fear, her hands raised in defense. The last photo showed her lifeless, her body crumpled on the ground. The images were a silent confession, a chilling record of a predator's work. Kessler had used Claire's own camera to document his crime, a trophy of his depravity. In the interrogation room, Kessler sat stone-faced, his arms crossed, his eyes like slate. Detectives laid out the photos one by one, a grim timeline of Claire's final moments. 4 hours. He said nothing, his silence a wall. Then the lead investigator, Agent Carla Ruse, leaned forward, her voice low. "We have your notebook, John. We have the camera. We have her." She slid the final photo across the table. Claire, lifeless, her eyes open to the sky. Kessler's jaw twitched, the first crack in his facade. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice flat, devoid of remorse. She was alone. She shouldn't have been. His confession unspooled like a slow poison. He'd seen Claire at the trailhead, her energy drawing him in. He followed her for 2 days, watching from a distance, waiting for the right moment. On her second night, near Hurricane Pass, he struck as she stepped away from her tent to filter water. She fought hard, scratching his arm, screaming into the empty night. He silenced her with a rock, then buried her in a shallow grave, taking her camera and a few items as keepsakes. He admitted to other attacks: 2 women in Montana, 1 in Colorado, their cases unsolved until now. The notebook was his ledger, a catalog of his hunts across the West's wild places. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. In a Jackson courtroom, Claire's family sat through testimony that carved new wounds. Emily clutched her mother's hand as the photos were described, too graphic to be shown. Tom stared at Kessler, searching for a shred of humanity, finding none. On October 10, 2024, Kessler was convicted of kidnapping, sexual assault, and first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life without parole, his words heavy with disgust. "You turned a place of beauty into a graveyard." The verdict closed other cases, tooth a bracelet and earrings linked to the Montana and Colorado victims, giving their families answers after years of torment. Claire's memorial was held at sunrise, overlooking the Tetons. Her family scattered her ashes, where she'd taken her favorite photos, the peaks glowing pink against the dawn. Tom spoke last, his voice breaking. "She saw the world's beauty when most of us forgot how to look. I'll carry her with me every day." The crowd wept, the mountains standing as silent witnesses. Claire's story lingers like a shadow on the trails we walk, a reminder that the wilderness holds more than beauty. It hides predators who wear human faces. Next time you hike alone, listening to the wind, ask yourself, who else is listening? Her death was a tragedy, but her life was a light, and that's what we should hold on to. Well, have you ever heard of a case like this? Comment your thoughts. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.